Yes, welcome back fellas to another lap guide. This week is Daily Race C. Video coming a bit late, but that's because we have zero experience in Bathurst and it has taken us the best part of 5 days to learn where to turn left and where to turn right. Better buckle yourself in, this is going to be a long guide, plenty to learn here at Bathurst. And hopefully we can bring something new. We had to watch quite a few track guides this week. Once I watched one, YouTube kept serving me more. Hopefully we can go into a little bit more depth because most of the stuff I browsed through didn't unlock any secrets. We had to watch quite a few top 10 replays to really try and learn what some of the faster people were doing, where they were doing it, and try and understand why they were doing it. So hopefully we get to cover a few of those things throughout this lap. Most of the time I'm losing is across the top of the mountain. Obviously that is where you can lose a lot of time. The two most important corners, the last corner onto Conrod Straight, Forest Elbow, and the first corner of which I have forgotten to remember the name, but the one leading up to Mountain Straight. If you nail both those corners, your lap time will come down considerably, anywhere up to the order of 3 or 4 tenths worth on both of those straights. So spend most of your day practicing those, and then start to nail across the top of the mountain. So without further ado, we will jump on board as we go down to turn 1 as always. So here we are using the 100 board as our brake marker. We're going to brake just a touch after. The key point I've picked up here is a little bit of brake and throttle overlap. So this screenshot was meant to be with the brakes on and the throttle on at the same time. Look how early we're on the throttle. This is really settling the car. We've stayed in first, some people using second, some people using third in this Aston Martin. Really feed that throttle in, maximising your grip on the way out. But yeah, that little bit of opening the throttle or cracking the throttle open before you finish braking really does settle the car. So turn 2, braking at the 100 board. This is 2 quick downshifts and we're going to wait for third to help rotate the car on entry. Try and hug this curb, open the throttle early as possible, and then really start feeding that throttle in to load up the outside of the car to give you grip, pushing yourself up the hill. The next section we're about to attack, this is going to be a throttle lift and turn in. Make sure you've already turned in before you lift. That lift will help you rotate the car. Then you're going to balance the brakes, push it into some threshold braking, crack that throttle once again to get the car balanced, start feeding in some throttle, and push yourself even further up the hill. Now a few guides reference this tree here on the left hand side. You really want to have your eyes focused at the right hand side of that Fujitsu sign. Your apex is down under there. Run this curb. When this curb runs out on the right hand side, I did have a little arrow, there it is. That's where you're trying to run your tyres over, and wide open throttle already. Try not to graze the wall on the left hand side, you're going to keep it pinned. Now I like to lift off right in this dip and have the front tyres loaded up. You have to keep your left hand tyre on top of that curb or not on the curb at all. If you ride half curb, that will throw you into the wall, as we get a little bit of a glance as we don't get it right. Turn in as you slide over this curb. Now we're going to try and understeer to that apex, which is the end of the curbing on the left hand side. Wide open throttle as soon as you get anywhere near it. Run to the curb if you can. Very slippery out there. Caution. Braking under whatever this gantry sign is, don't recall. It's going to be a long trail braking section, feeding in as we reduce the steering, feeding in more brake. The little trick to this is opening the throttle midway through here. That will find you a tenth or two. Crack that throttle open. Back on the brakes to dip the nose in. Crack the throttle as early as possible. So we're not chasing wide open throttle, we just want the throttle open so the car can keep moving forward. Long trail braking section here, once again, braking before we turn right. As the car straightens up, we're going to hit the picks even further, really trying to touch this blue wall on the right hand side. Your apex for Forest Elbow is the step in the wall here. That's where I found I could start getting the throttle open. You'll see the throttle is open already and wired open as soon as you realise you're not going to hit the Falcon sign on the way out. And hopefully that has given you a nice 133 split here on the last sector. If you're in the 32s, you're a madman. We've only managed to drop in the 32s once. We get a 33 over here. Don't use the curb on the right hand side. Braking at the 150 board, we brake a little bit early here because we saw the 133.0. You can get another couple of meters out of that if you want to. Trail braking, because we broke early, we turn in early. That's forced us to hit this curb here on the left hand side. Just, you want to take less curb or none at all. Feed that throttle in as early as possible. We're cracking the throttle on the apex and then getting wide open as soon as the car allows us. Braking at the 100 board this time. Nice long threshold braking section. And you'll see we open the throttle really early here once again. This really seems to settle this Aston Martin. Throttle's open really before the apex here. We're going to stay at probably quarter throttle, then try and feed it up to half, 3/4, wide open once we realise we're not going to hit the grass, and run to the line. So there was turn one. We just left the volume up so you could hear the engine labour. Really long trail braking section, trying to keep the nose down for that turn one, and really trying to jump on the juice really early. Remember that throttle brake overlap, braking at the 100 board I think it was. Try and hold this. In case you missed it, we're on board now for all the onboard players. A little lift. Threshold braking for the slightest of seconds into a nice little trail braking U-turn. Try not to get the wobble on the way out. Cost us a little bit. Really narrow up here across the top of the mountain. Trying to run these walls. Trying to take all that curb or none of it. Trying not to get any of that wall. Turn in off the bump or off the curb. Braking under the gantry. Light brake pressure so the car responds. Crack the throttle a little bit, back on the brakes, back on the throttle, wide open now, really short shift there. Long trail braking, try and hug the blue wall on the right hand side, get into the wall cutaway, back on the juice now, and you'll finally get to breathe after 1 minute flying through that narrow top of the hill section or across the top of the mountain. I can barely keep up talking about it. But you get your breather now. You've just cracked your 133. 150 board, hard under brakes. Try not to take too much curb here. Minimal the better. Crack open the throttle as early as possible. Get to wide open not long thereafter. 100 sign this time. Turning in after the 50 board. Get the throttle open before the apex. Wide open throttle when you realise you're not going to eat any grass. And back on board for some chase view. You'll see that we've added a new blue marker here. Really like to analyse this in the out of car mode so you can just really see how much track you're using or not using. Anything under 19 there is pretty handy to the first sector. Really important to try and have one bite at that. Worth a few tenths if you nail it. Looking for the apex under the sign there. Back on wide open. Lift off, hold part throttle for as long as possible. Another long section of part throttle. Long trail braking under the sign. Crack open throttle here. Crack it open again on the apex. Short shift 3, nice and quick. Keep it over to the right hand side of the track to open up Forest Elbow. and on the juice as early as possible there. We're really maximising Conrod Straight. Compose yourself for the 150 board. Check your mirrors, take a drink. Nothing more than a glance here. We sort of eat that curb a little bit. And the lap is coming to an end. If you can hold this corner, you've got yourself a decent quality time and it's time to race. Good luck, fellas. There it is, Bathurst in the dark.